Welcome to Resilience Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Ostrolenk. This show is about building better humans, institutions, and systems. On the show, I'll be interviewing many different experts from across many different fields, including human optimization, health and fitness, team building, mind-body medicine. In the institutional space, we're looking at different institutions and how we can create new ones, new models and maps, including in medicine, in education, in intelligence community, in law enforcement, in the military, especially in the special operations community. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show.
Michelle James is a creativity expert, author, speaker, and founder of the Center for Creative Emergence. She spent decades helping individuals, leaders, organizations unlock creativity, not simply as an artistic skill, but as a pathway to resilience, innovation, transformation, and deeper human aliveness. She's also the author of Pattern Breaks, a facilitator's guide to cultivating creativity, a powerful exploration of how creativity emerges when we disrupt old patterns and open space for new possibilities. In our last conversation, we explored the relationship between creativity and resilience, how creativity can help people navigate uncertainty, adversity, and reinvention. Today, we're going deeper into that conversation and exploring what it really takes to access creative flow in a world that often pulls us into stress, distraction, and survival mode. Well, Michelle, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Michael. So good to be here again.
Hey, it's good to have you back again. You and I were talking this morning, actually, and I was sharing with you a conversation that I co-led for my men's group about identity. And it was no judgment. We all have identities. We create identities for various reasons, survival reasons for the most part, in utero and early childhood. And the challenge that I brought to your attention was that there's a rigidity in these identities. And because we believe them to be who we are fully, that we limit our capacity to be playful, experiment, and try new things. I thought this would be a great conversation for us to have because this is what you do. You help people break out of that constrained way of seeing themselves. So I'd love to start this conversation about kind of like identity, rigidity, and creativity.
Okay. Sure. All right. Well, first of all, what I love what you spoke about was we're rigid in our identities. And so we know when we're rigid in our identities if we find ourselves saying, that's me, that's not me. That's me, that's not me. Um, it's helpful because it also gives us a container and it helps us our identity. But it's sort of if we could hold it, there's not anything wrong with saying that's me or that's not me because it's very helpful for discernment. But it's also helpful if we can hold something, especially if it's aspirational, as instead of, that's not me. I can't do that. I'm not the artist in the family. I'm not the creator, the creative one, or I'm not the one who does this, but hold it as something larger, like giving a little space, even saying, I'm not that yet, or I haven't accessed that yet, or
Yeah.
I haven't seen myself that way and I'm open to it. I haven't known myself that way, but I'm open to exploring that dimension of myself. Especially the key to know if it is really part of you is if there's any desire in you.
Mm.
If there's a desire in you to create, you are creative. I promise you that.
Well,
Yeah.
what's actually quite interesting is I could imagine, and the scale or the depth matters, but like whether one believes one to be creative or not, our whole system is being recreated physiologically, moment to moment to moment, and we are literally creating worlds inside of our own head in order to engage the world we believe to be true outside of us. So even if we don't think we're creative, we're creating all the time.
Exactly. And that's really the deeper truth. The deeper truth is we're all infinitely creative and we're all multidimensionally creative. Unfortunately, for most of us, we've been socialized and educated in a society where it has reduced who we are rather than expanded it. If we all are living for our full capacities, or even a tiny part of it, but more than just the societal norms, we are so creative. We're so multidimensional, and every single person is so much more than their just job description or their roles in life. Or, not only does everyone have a unique set of job descriptions, gifts, skills, talents, roles, but we're also so much more multi-dimensional than that. And creativity is so much more multi-dimensional than just painting a picture, which that is part of it, or just, dancing or theater. Like, it's part of it, but we're really creating worlds all the time and creating stories, and we're living by our creative stories inside of ourselves.
One of the stories that we share in common is Somatics. So I think that might be an interesting vehicle for us to kind of step into, because that's one of the things I brought up to you this morning. Because when I have these conversations with my clients, when I talk about rigidity in a system and their identity, it's not just a mental construct. It's not just a cognitive thing, how we think and believe ourselves to be. It's actually embedded in the nervous system. We actually structure ourselves in a certain way.
Mhm.
So before we even kind of dive deeply into that, just for listening audience and viewing audience, tell some folks about your background in somatics, because you actually got me involved in some really
Oh,
cool stuff back in the
yeah,
day.
right. Back in the day.
Back in the day.
Yeah,
Yep.
I had actually broke my jaw in a car accident, and I was not finding any relief in, some of the conventional physical therapies. It was helpful, but I was still in a lot of pain, and I was walking around kind of off balance. And somebody had told me about a woman named Kay Miller, who was leading, from the Somatic Institute of Pittsburgh, who was leading a workshop. I went and I took it, and I had such immediate relief
Mm.
laying on the floor doing some of the exercises that I became a client of hers, and she did many sessions, which helped my jaw immensely. And then when she offered the training, I took her 3-year training, then the 2-year mastery training, and I met you somewhere in there
Yeah,
or
yeah.
soon after. And then you and I were on the floor doing some body work, and then I introduced you to her. Yeah. So
Well, actually, I can remember. I think might have been Robbie Richmond's place. Like, that place that rented the whole space out. Everyone had their own unique little space.
yeah. Yes. Oh yeah. The
Yeah.
co-working space they had.
A co-working space. It might have been there, and I walked in and I was carrying a bag, and I might have hurt my shoulder or something.
Mhm.
And,
I think yes.
you're like, I think I can fix that. And you're like, got me on the ground and we did some stuff. I'm like, wow, this is kind
Right.
of cool.
Right. I think our first meeting, right, exactly. It was something lab. I can't remember, but you hurt your shoulder. Our first meeting, within like 2 minutes, we're on the floor and we're doing some like hands-on body work.
Actually,
Yeah. Right. Well, so what I learned there, and subsequently in a lot of body centered programs, and then also leading a lot of body centered kinds of things in my own somatic experiments, that yes, when we first when we unleash the rigidness in the body, first of all, that makes us feel so much better. It also releases, some locked traumas or old memories or experiences. But it also unleashes deep levels of creativity and awarenesses, and getting back to moving in our more natural state. The good news is we actually have an imprint. We actually have impulses that want us to move in the most natural,
mm,
focused and flowing way. When you think about how we babies move or how animals move, it's not rigid, or there's a focus. So that's the structure. And then there's this flow, there's natural movement, and they move very economically. They're not wasting a lot of movement. And then we get kind of socialized out of it. And then all of a sudden, because of holding tension, because we were educated that way, we go to school and they're sit up straight, don't look around, and we learn, you only come out, you started your climbing and jumping and running and moving in 360 degrees all the time, and then all of a sudden you're very linear and up and down one way or the other, and then we lose some of that flexibility and we become more rigid in our bodies. Well, once we unleash the rigidity in our bodies, we also start to release some of the new neural pathways, which help us release rigidity in our minds, and
well,
vice versa.
and I look to kind of deeper dive into that. Have I mentioned my work with Erwan LaCour, the founder of MoveNet? We ever talk about him?
No, but funny you should mention. Oh, I don't have it up here. I got the Move Nat book. I took Move Nat classes here. No, tell me about it.
He's a friend of mine, and I
Oh,
got about the system, and I was just gonna put, level 1 and level 2 and all that kind of stuff like that. But
mm,
I'm, in terms of like how do you move with gravity, like we've been designed evolutionarily to move appropriately to gravity. Then we learn all these bad habits, and we do it inappropriately to gravity. We cause all these injuries, long term use injuries. And I remember my first day with his people. They're like, "Oh, let's see how you crawl." I'm like, "I know how to crawl. Like, let's see how let's how you crawl, walk, run, lift, carry, throw, and there might have been a six or something.
jump or something or climb.
Oh, jump and climb, yeah." And I'm like going, "I know how to do all those things." I'm like in my 40s. I know, I've been trained for a long time, and I like effing don't know how to crawl properly, walk properly, all this stuff. I'm like, I learned so many bad habits that are
Mhm.
problematic, to your point. It's like we learn from our culture kind of these rigid ways of engaging the world, and it is very self-limiting and problematic physically for long-term injuries, of course.
Absolutely. And, even though the different parts of the brain sort of work in different ways, when we create new neural pathways in one aspect, we start to create them. So when we start to move differently, what you're talking about is getting back because it's like move naturally, getting back to our natural movement, as was the core somatics and as the Feldenkrais, and I remember having to relearn in our core somatics training sort of how to crawl. And I didn't get as deep into the move nat as you're talking about, but I did take a few classes with a local person here. And it was, how you lift a rock and how you hold it. Where instead of like holding it one way, you suddenly hold it like this, and it puts so much more relaxation on your system. Or
Hi, Jeff, your trainer?
um, no, her
Yeah,
name's Camille here in
okay, that's right.
Charlottesville. Yeah. And
Fair enough. Mm.
but I don't, I just learned something new about you. I love that you do it. And back to the rigidity connection. Well, so first of all, when we've been so socialized in so many layers and levels away from our multidimensional selves and our creative selves, where all kids are naturally creative explorers, discoverers, and we're, reaching and climbing and learning through direct experience. And then all of a sudden we get very told, how to do it or what to do, or get distracted by television or, the phones or AI or whatever. And with each new external distraction, we leave sort of our body more. But the
Yeah.
body is such an important, we create through the body. We create through our bodies. If we did not, and I mean, it could be argued, people can sit back and have a very vivid imagination and visualization, but there is a way of, we create our relationships to a lot of things through our body and also through our minds. So working, neuroplasticity is a great way to, um, creating new neural pathways is a great way to start to move into more creative territory. But there's also something to be said by being learning the art of stillness in the body, of where you're not distracted, you're just and you're being with what emerges, because that's when you actually can start to feel the creative impulse emerge.
Are you familiar with the authentic movement system?
I know authentic movement. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the same, but
It was, Tino Stromstad was my instructor. And to your point, it is an amazing, like you sit and spontaneous movements occur.
mhm.
You don't analyze them and try to figure them out. You just allow them to unfold. And as a result, it's fascinating because then psychological material also starts unfolding
Mm.
naturally. And
Yeah.
it's contrary to like choreographed movement. Even yoga, the way it's done in the West, is like you move from one thing to the other to the other. And a lot of our training is very structured and choreographed physical training. So I love the fact you brought up authentic movement as like a antidote to that really structured approach.
Yeah, and the both and, like, you you get mastery level and skill through focus and through the discipline of sort of learning different crafts or learning different dances. But then you receive the connection with that your inner your deepest level creativity when you allow exactly what you're saying. You allow it to emerge, and you might just sit there until an impulse moves, and then you move something, and then you do something. And I know in my coaching I work with is creative emergence, literally, where
Yeah.
it's also ideas or insights, and there you have to create. Now we have to create the conditions for those to emerge, because if we don't create the space, time, and attention for it, other things get in the way. But they're exactly so. I don't know that I know the particular type of authentic movement, but I know authentic movement in a variety of different ways, and authentic dance, and an improv dance, and improv movement, and improv theater. All of those are great ways to release the rigidity. All of those will help you break out of rigidity. Yeah,
think I shouted out to you last time you and I spoke on the air, that because you've been promoting improv as a great practice for your clients, and hearing you talk about it, I've actually encouraged clients to do it, and it's amazing, especially the introverts who are always like thinking through everything they're going to say, so they don't make a mistake and say the wrong thing, all that stuff. Improv is such a great tool for everyone, I'm sure, especially those types of folks.
absolutely. And I think we mentioned before, it changes your relationships to mistakes completely, or your fear of mistakes. You do enough improv, you will stop fearing making mistakes. They become more iterations toward what will work. They become more explorations or fun discoveries, or then mistakes become more fun and funny. So then when it transfers into your life with real stakes, it's not that you're taking it less seriously when you have real high stakes. You just are more adaptive and more flexible and more resilient. You know, um, one type of rigidity is there's one right way, or it has to be done this way, or here's the plan, and we have to stick with the plan no matter what. Meanwhile, all kinds of things are happening. So if you do enough like authentic movement, natural movement, somatics, improv, different kinds of flexibility training and neuroplasticity training. Then when life breaks a pattern for you, or when something happens, you can adapt and respond in a more resourced way, in a more centered way, in a way where you're not just floored. You're coming from more of your higher creative intelligence. We all have a creative intelligence running through us, and so a lot of breaking patterns and getting out of rigidity is aligning with that intelligence, so we operate from it more often.
I would imagine that the industrial age, very structured, like all our systems are organized within the industrial age is very structured. Education, ring the bell, go to the next class, go to the next class, ring the bell. But it's a very structured way of being in the world. And in many, if not most cases, it's very black and white. This is the way we do things in this office, and you just keep doing it. There's not like a lot of space for innovation necessarily. Information age, I could imagine, though, like breaks that whole thing wide open,
Mhm.
and a necessary mindset, not say body set with what we're talking about, a body mindset would be that kind of adaptive, playful, curious way of being in the world, which is necessary to actually not only survive, but perhaps thrive in the information age slightly differently, maybe than the industrial age, factory age. What are your
I think that's absolutely true. And I think I know now there's almost a little backlash to some of uh, getting too overconsumed with too much information outside of us all the time. And there are a lot of people that are, they're doing digital detox days or unplugging days, or now take a walk and unplug.
analog watch?
Yeah, yeah, right. We all are, we all are in it all the time. So I think this next um age is really going to be more of an age of where we're more curating our relationship to information from the inside out. Um, because at one point, all of a sudden, it's great. We have access to everything. You pop online, you can do. And so, as a yes and, and the yes and adaptive approach, the yes and from improv, we can then go, all right, when was the last time I heard my inner voice speak? When was the last time I felt my that joyful aliveness? When was that last time I felt an impulse to go play or to go run and do something? And those impulses are always there. They're always coming up. But when we're consumers and not creators, when we're taking in and not generating out, or not taking time to receive the impulses, then we can lose sight of that. And all the consumption in the world that we get from the outside in isn't like that inner joyfulness that comes from actually feeling something and doing something with it, creating in some way or interacting or doing. So, creativity to me is both inside out and outside in.
And I like, because you said this earlier. I might have even said this in my introduction to you. I'd like to highlight this. Creativity is not like, oh, you're an artist, which is fine if you're an artist, but like drawing or painting or sculpting, whatever it is, it's like it's a way of being in the world.
Mhm.
It's like literally how you show up in your marriage, if you're married, with your children, with your workmates, with yourself. Can you talk about and maybe define creativity beyond just an artist way as a way of being in the world?
Um, talk about creativity as a way of being in the world. Yeah.
Not just limited to like an artist.
Sure. Right.
Sure.
Well, if you think of art, art is one type of creativity. It's a form of creative expression. You are in a relationship with whatever you're creating, with your sculpting, your painting, um, that is a relationship, a certain kind of relationship to creativity. The creativity can happen in any kind of conversation. The creativity can happen in anytime you make a dinner or anytime you plan a trip, or you have to adapt and pivot in real time, or, creative problem solving, creative solution finding, uh, creative visioning of imagining what's next. So just the capacity of to dream something or have an aspiration is a creative act.
Yeah.
In fact, we're almost never not creating in some way, but where people can feel lost or disconnected from their creativity is because it might not be they're not might be as connected to their own creative impulse, that they don't have agency. They don't feel agency with it. There's something that happens when you feel a creative agency within you, and then you act on it and you create, whether any different time, like arts, or, a workshop or a program or an offering or a book, or, uh, versus when you're just adapting and responding. That is a type of creativity, an improvisational adapting. But there's a type that, from our animating life force, we all have this like creative life force, a creative intelligence in us. And I think when we have life giving, when we have a relationship with it, and that simply means giving it enough space and time and attention to reconnect with it, like any relationship, like you would with a partner, like you would with a colleague, like you would with clients. It takes some space, time, and attention. The relationship to our inner creative self or creative source or creative life force is the same. We give it some space, time, and attention, and then we become more confident in our connection with it. We feel it's more there for us. We are more in the receptive state to receive it being there for us. And I think that then life feels more creative in general.
How does one develop or deepen one's relationship to that creative energy within?
Gosh. Well, do you have 10 years? No.
3 hours.
Well, yeah, there are certainly some major points. one that I think is often overlooked when people talk about, how do you access your creativity? One, I would say, is the willingness, and I would put this as one of the most important, having worked with thousands of people, coached hundreds of people, that the willingness to that how you currently, stories you currently hold, how you currently see things, your current belief systems isn't the complete picture. That it's not, it doesn't even have to be wrong, but at least it's incomplete. So all of a sudden you take a closed system and you open it up a little. As soon as you open it up to, there's a possibility that there may be other ways of seeing this, other ways of doing this, other ways of holding it, other things that I don't know. So one is, because I like to work from the inner landscape out. An inner landscape is really getting to know what are the habits, the belief systems, the stories, the worldviews you carry, and then allowing the possibility that something else can also be true. Or because then it starts, then you're sort of telling your creative energy flow, I'm creating some space for you. Because if you can't discover what you already know, right? And so once we open, and I would say that's one of them. And the other is, challenging all your own assumptions, which that's part of it. Why do I believe what I believe? Is it true? Is it possible that it's not, but that's still kind of connected to what we talked about. I think another is, um, committing to the relationship with your creative self the way you would commit with someone who meant something to you.
Oh, nice. Okay.
If someone means something to you, you give that person a little bit of time. You let them speak. You don't just
Mhm.
barrel over them. If you're in a conversation with someone who means something to you, you don't just interrupt them the whole time, or when they talk and or they say they're thirsty, you wouldn't just ignore them. If you start to treat your creative self the way that someone means something, all of a sudden you're now taking a lead in receiving it and creating a relationship with it. And then what'll happen is you'll start to hear it more. You'll start to feel more in partnership and harmony with that inner creative self. So space, time, and attention is essential. And it would be cliche to say, and just love your creative self. It'd be great. But even if you can't start there, you can start by thinking, how would I treat someone who means something to me? And then treat your creative self like that. And that will start to unfold. The other thing is, use, do non-habitual things start doing, non-habitual things in the body
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
in your mind and and maybe even in things that you'll try. But for example, um, if you always walk on flat surfaces, start walking on uneven surfaces, rocks and wood. All of a sudden, you're creating a bunch of new neural pathways. And then your feet are remembering they have more than two ways that, it's not just forward and back. They're using all the bones and muscles. And when you start to see the world differently when you're on different surfaces. When you start to embody or act things out, you start to see the world differently. So if I could imagine I was pretend you're Michael, and how would he answer this? Or, there's a very famous kind of creativity game, I think, or exercise people know. So what would so and so do? And but putting on, imagining yourself, but you can also do that with concepts or yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Let me just share this with you because it's great. I co-led a couples retreat, and we actually had couples play each other, and it was so much fun. I mean, it's fun because it's funny,
Yeah.
but for them, it was brilliant because they became more empathetic to the other person, trying to embody the way that they see the world. and is stretching for them because, they're usually critiquing the other person for how they see the world. And now they're trying to be that person, see why they see the world, the way they see the world, and speak to that. And it was just is a great exercise.
I love it. Yeah, I can imagine that would be super powerful. And it is. And one thing is you can even write a letter from imagine that person's writing you a letter. So because a lot of times, let's say you're having a challenge with someone, and it's easy to understand, it's easy from our own worldview to see why we see something the way we do. And of course, and then if you write a letter from that person's perspective on how they're seeing that challenge. Because when you really write it from theirs, that person would never see, sometimes people will say, well, that person's just closed minded, or that
Mhm.
person is just, if they were writing a letter, they would never just start with, I'm just closed minded. I just don't want to see the truth. I'm just being difficult. All the things people tend to say, they would say, they would offer something. So
Yeah.
and again, it's not about solving the problem or having to agree with what but to expand the understanding. And every time we do something where we go into an empathic kind of creative activity, imagining we're someone or something else, we expand our understanding. We also expand our capacity to hold paradox, which that would be a third thing that I would say.
I see that. Yeah.
That famous Walt Whitman quote, I contradict myself very well. I'm large, I contain multitudes. He's really talking about it being a multidimensional self, and that sometimes one part of us thinks something different than another part of us. Like part of someone might want to be really fit and healthy, and another part really wants that chocolate cake, so I mean, we can have different conflicting parts, but we can have them at multiple levels. And if we can acknowledge and start to work with and at least understand those conflicting parts and develop a relationship with them, all of a sudden things move differently. We not only create new neural pathways and have more access to creativity and what will create or what will happen, but we tend to feel our nervous system tends to regulate more when we have that capacity to empathize with people from the outside and even different parts of ourselves.
I was going to affirm that too, because back in the day, I studied Jolie, Italian psychiatrist,
Mm,
Jung, for that time. Some personalities was his thing, but today it's called parts,
yeah.
internal family. So like same concept, different structure. And I think the parts work, to your point, is so important because there's a wisdom in the parts. And if we act too rigidly, that's not even a word, with ourselves, we don't have access to the creative juices or the wisdom that's in parts of us that would like to be expressed in new and unique ways that we've held against. So I
Yeah,
love.
I agree. We can that's a great way of saying it, because we can actually then we go into inner conflict, and then we feel stuck.
Yeah.
Or if one part of us really wants to create something and another part of us is locked in fear. It's not safe, the world's not safe. There's different stories. Then, then there's an inner. So once we kind of connect and learn how to relate more to the different parts and dialogue with them, create with them, we're so, all of our creative sources, the source of our creativity, our creative selves is so infinite that if you, if, if you're visual, like it can draw something. Like you might say, I don't understand this. Can you draw it for me? And one part of you will draw something, and then now you're in that divergent, kind of more right brain state receiving it. And then you bring in the left brain, and it can look and go, oh, what's this meaning, or am I getting from it? And when you bring the right brain and the left brain together, that is another way of breaking out of rigidity.
Right on. Right on.
Rigidity, the irony is if you're only doing flow, you know how there's if you only value flow and you don't value focus or structure, then the creativity can just go off the rails, like it doesn't have a container. It's like water flowing without a riverbank. If
Yeah.
you're only doing structure or too much focus or rigid plans that don't have any room for space or movement, then the creativity just gets blocked. It's like a dam,
Okay.
a river. So you want some structure and then some flow. And here's the truth of what I believe is true from what I've experienced, that with working with so many different people, everyone actually has their own unique dance of structure and flow, of exactly how much structure and how much flow they need.
Mhm.
Some people need a lot more structure but everyone needs both to be really creative.
I don't know if you know this, but those pictures, this right here wait,
Oh my gosh.
this is the samurai who's about structure, hierarchy, control. And this is the Ronin who's masterless at chaos, freedom. So it's like the yin and yang. It's that dynamic balance that you just discussed.
Oh, yeah, I could not love that more. Exactly. That's exactly what, the dance and the forward movement and the kind of, and the dance, the discovery. Um, and, it's a dynamic strategy instead of, rigid. Or so you know, a lot of it is just also looking, making sure we have time away from distractions. And even if that is something like literally for you, just go on a walk around the neighborhood for 10 minutes and don't bring your phone. Everyone's different, but even if it start with 5 minutes, but to get away from something that feels comfortable. A lot of times we don't, because it might not be um, alcohol or drugs or some other kind of, addiction that everyone agrees like that's an addiction. People get addicted to their consumption. They get addicted to being fed from the outside.
Well, I'll throw myself under the bus. Like I'm a rucker. So I like to carry heavy weights long distance. And that's like that's, although it's uncomfortable, it's my comfort zone. And literally yesterday for about an hour, I have a yoga mat over there and I sat on the yoga mat and I did spontaneous movements because I realized that like I've been doing so, I've become so rigid in my training. I've become so comfortable with being uncomfortable with the weight, carrying weight long distances. It was uncomfortable for me at the very beginning just to sit quietly and just see where my body wanted to go. But after an hour, it was like fantastic. I was in a bliss state, but it was uncomfortable to get there. It's kind of funny.
Uh, you know what? I love what you're saying. That's such a good insight that we can, that our habits, even if the habits are designed to break our like we're doing a new habit to break patterns or to some, and then our habits then become a pattern. And then we have to, yeah, I've had that happen. I remember I noticed it I loved to read and I still do. And but noticed that there was a time where I hadn't like read anything that wasn't on a screen in months. And then the first time I sat back down to just give my space to really get into the book, it took a little while to get back into that relaxed state that I always would have when I did it, and so we, getting back into something like sometimes what we'll do to relax our nervous system, the first few times we do it will actually just point out to us all the places we're not relaxed.
I think that's really important. Yeah.
Sometimes when you want to be more creative. Oh, one other thing I would say about the creativity, uh, especially is to not need whatever you're creating or doing to succeed, to not have an expectation that it either has to be great artistry, a great work of art, or that it has to succeed. So many people, when they don't um, allow it to be terrible,
Mhm.
or it doesn't mean it will be, but if you're okay with it, then you'll just continue the exploration without needing it to be a great work of art. If you start to paint and you think and you stop halfway through because you're not liking it or you don't think anyone's, allow yourself to just play with the art. What's it feel like when I do this kind of stroke? What's it feel like? What's it feel like when I do my other hand? Start playing, make it a game, make it fun. You're moving energy, and eventually you practice it enough, you'll start to do things that you like better, but allow it to not be something that has to look good when it's done.
And let me encourage that too with couples. If you bring in a playful approach, how you deal with conflict, for instance, you're going to do it imperfectly, whatever even that means, because you're trying something new. You're going to fumble around, not being attached to that, but being open to the process itself is a great idea. I love that, especially for couples, but not just limited to couples.
I love that. That's great. Absolutely. And with couples, like I know you work with couples a lot, and it's also true in business partnerships or creative collaborations.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I do that too. Before you even work on you're creating these conditions for the creative, for it to emerge. And so one of the conditions or agreements or, is sort of like we're going to allow space to, that non-judgmental space. That non-judgmental space is imperative. And the thing is, we were socialized into the judgmental space. If you watch how kids co-create together
Mm,
naturally,
naturally.
people say something, then the other one adds on, then the other one adds on. They're natural improvisers, storytellers, imagination makers, and they don't stop to evaluate themselves while doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're playing the game, they're having fun, unless you give them a game where there's a win at the end.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Then they might go, "Oh, I lost this game." But if it's just um, them playing together, they often will just naturally, that the act of play is very joyful and it's very organic and very natural. And I think what's happening is a lot of people are starting to long for that. A lot of adults are starting to long for that in our very distractible world.
Percent agree. You had mentioned reading earlier, and I see over your left shoulder is your book.
Oh, yes.
I like to encourage people to read your work.
Okay. I have one here.
Perfectly, perfect.
Pattern
Talk,
breaks. The
yeah, talk to
facilitator.
us about that. Breaks.
Yes. Yeah, that would be great. It's go to patternbreaks.com. It's also on my website, creative emergence coaching.com or creativeemergence.com. You can find links to the book there, but patternbreaks.com. Yeah, it's for anybody who wants to create conditions for creativity to emerge. It's for facilitators, coaches, trainers, uh, leaders, anybody who leads groups, but it's also, you could use it as an individual or you could even use it as a couple.
Nice.
They
Okay.
do these games together to create a more receptive, life-giving, generative, co-creative, collaborative space.
To integrate that into my couples work. That's
I
awesome.
know. I was just thinking about that. I thought maybe I might do like a little couples guide after, because some of these would lend much better to them. And there's others that aren't in the book that would. Yeah, that would be great, Michael.
Wow. And
Add
just to
that into yours.
tease the viewing and listening audience, you and I are talking about doing a webinar together. So maybe
Yeah.
that could be included in our webinar coming up.
Well, that would be great. Yes. Oh, yes.
Where else so you mentioned your book, you mentioned your website. Are you on social? Can people
Uh,
find
yeah, the best way I think, just find me on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn. It's Creative Emergence. My you can email me info at Creative Emergence, or you can creativeemergence.com is my coaching, my facilitation website and organization, and then creativeemergencecoaching.com is the coaching. So,
make sure to include all those in the show notes.
oh, thanks, Michael. And it's been really a delight to speak with you.
Same here. It's nice to have you back on. And of course, you'll be back on again in the near future. Great to see you, Michelle.